Well, I'm once again very pleased to welcome Andy Godfrey from Sorted Magazine to bring us some more movie reviews today. Hello, Andy. How are you?
I'm good, Nathan. How are you?
Very well, thanks, and super excited to hear about some more new movies.
Yeah. Well, we're gearing up for a number of new releases that are coming out today into the cinema, and one classic film, at least I think it's a classic, that is coming back to cinemas for a very specific reason on a very specific day. So we can talk about that in a moment. So you're happy for me just to talk about some of the films that are coming out today?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so there's three films that are coming out. So first of all, we got Wild Robot. Now, this is supposedly the best animated film of the year. It's about a robot who gets washed up Robinson Crusoe like on a desert island and makes friends with the local animals. Okay, so this is a cute little kids film, except that towards the end of the film, the second half of the film, the manufacturers of the robot send an army of robots to invade this island to get him back, and he doesn't want to go. So he joins up with these animals that he's made friends with to fight off this army of robots that have come to get him. The trailer, the animation looks absolutely superb. It really is, and word of mouth is that this is one of the best, as I say, animated films of the year. Now, if you think that this year we've had Inside Out 2, we had Despicable Me 4, we've had several other animated films. This is this looks really good. So I think it'll be one for families. It's a PG certificate. It'll be one for families to go and see this weekend if you're looking to treat the kids. So look out for Wild Robot. I think that's going to be really, really good. And then sort of in between the other two, we've got a film coming out called The Apprentice. Now, this has caused a lot of controversy, and people may well have seen it on things like News at 10 being discussed on Newsnight. It was actually discussed, this film, because it's about the early life of one Donald Trump. And we know that Donald Trump was on the American TV version of The Apprentice. This is about how his rise to fame. This is about his rise to power. This is about his rise to become a multimillionaire. This film is all about Donald Trump, and he himself has disowned it. He himself has said, "Look, this is a work of fiction. I don't like this film." He actually set out to see if he could sue the film's makers because for defamation of character, because he didn't feel the film portrayed him in a very good light, didn't tell his story very accurately. However, the film survived all of that, is coming out, and very, very interesting with the American election just sort of a couple of weeks away now, that they have chosen to release. That was the other problem for Donald Trump. He didn't want a film which paints him in a particularly bad light coming out before the election in America. This was another reason he tried to get the film delayed. And he really has been quite upset about it, which means that we all should queue up and go and see it. Because anything that upsets Trump is a good thing. I think it will be entertaining. I'm not sure how educational it will be. I mean, people have said it's not that accurate in terms of being a biographical picture of Donald Trump's life. But nevertheless, The Apprentice is coming out. That should be interesting. And then just another one that people may have seen in the cinemas. And this again goes to the other extreme. So this is an 18 certificate. So this is Smile 2. So a couple of years back, horror film came out called Smile, which did quite well. Basically, if you witness a death and somebody is smiling at you as they die, you're about to be haunted. You're about to die. It's a very convoluted kind of storyline. But Smile 2. So the first one obviously did well enough to generate a sequel. That the sequels are not always a sign that the first one was great. It's just a sign that, well, some people went to see it and we think we can make a bit more money. There's not normally a lot of artistic value in some of these, particularly horror sequels. They just churn them out basically because we think people went to see the first one. We assume people will see this, and it's Halloween coming up. It's the season. So Smile 2 is out. The film that I mentioned earlier on that's coming out on a very particular day. So we've talked about, I think, Back to the Future before now, and I think I said you played Huey Lewis in the news the other week, and I said that Huey Lewis is actually in Back to the Future. He's the judge at the talent contest who tells Marty that his band, the Pinheads, are too loud, which is a really, really funny moment. We know that in the second film, Marty went to the future. Now, the date that Marty went to the future, and this just shows how wrong they got it, and the producers have admitted it, was October the 21st, 2015. Okay? October the 21st. Now, on October the 1st, 2015, cinemas showed all three Back to the Future films. And I went and I sat there and I watched. I'd seen them all before at the cinema, but I watched all three back to back because that was the date that Marty went to the future. So now, to celebrate 30 years of Back to the Future 2, on the 21st of October 2024, they're re-releasing part 2 again. All I would say is that so many people have been born like yourself since Back to the Future came out, never saw the Back to the Future films at the cinema. Go see it at the cinema. Back to the Future 2, I think is great. For me, the best part of Back to the Future 2 is when they go back to the past so that Marty sees himself playing Johnny Be Good on stage and that kind of thing. They recreate scenes from the first film, but from a different angle. It's very clever. It's very well done. It's really very, very enjoyable. I love all the Back to the Future films. I could just sit and watch them again and again. And I don't think you've got three films. It's like watching one long film. The interesting thing with Back to the Future Part 2, when Back to the Future Part 1 came out, as we now call it, right at the end, it said the end. There was never an intention to make a Back to the Future Part 2 or Part 3. When we saw Back to the Future originally at the cinema, I remember sitting there absolutely loving it, and it came up the end. Then a few years later, because the film had done so well and beyond all expectations, there was demand for a sequel. And at the end of Back to the Future, the director, the director had put Jennifer, Marty's girlfriend, in the time machine. Now, he has said, if he'd known they were ever going to make a part 2, he would never have put her in the time machine. Because that meant they had to recreate her character in the future. They had to show her and Marty had got married. They had to show her and Marty's kids. That created problems. I mean, Michael J. Fox actually plays his own daughter, and he plays his own son in Back to the Future Part 2. And it created all sorts of problems. And the director has said, if we knew that there was going to be a Part 2 at the time we were making Part 1, I would never have put Jennifer in the time machine. But Jennifer's in the time machine. So when you're watching Part 2, just bear that in mind, that they never intended for the character of Jennifer. That's why she's not in Part 3 at all. It's just at the very beginning and at the very end of Part 3. But nice thing to do. Go and see Back to the Future Part 2 at the cinema. Really, really enjoy it. So we've got all these other films out at the cinema at the moment. We've still got Beetlejuice Riding High. Unfortunately, Sound of Hope, the Christian film we were talking about last week, has been drawn now from cinemas. It's had its week in the cinema. Didn't do great box office. I mean, some people from my church went to see it, thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it will do much better when it comes out on streaming and Blu-ray, because churches will be able to get their hands on it and show it. And I will encourage churches. I'll let you know when it comes out on Blu-ray and DVD. And will encourage churches to get their hands on it and show it. Maybe have a film like your church and show it. But that has now left cinemas, which is a shame. But it was inevitable. They very often, I mean, a lot of Cineworlds did not show it in the end. My daughter in Jersey, she messaged me and said, "Dad, it's not showing over here in the Cineworld," which was a real shame, you know. But it will do better on streaming, you know. So that's what's on at the cinema at the moment. Beetlejuice is still number one. It's still doing great guns, great box office. I mean, I can't believe it, really. And I'm looking forward to a whole host of new films, because this week the London Film Festival has been happening. And the London Film Festival is a great event. I haven't been able to get to it, but it always showcases new films. So I'm told by those who have been that there are some really great films coming down the track. So that's from the cinema.
Awesome.
Shall we move on to what's available at home?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I want to highlight a couple of films in particular, Nathan. So when World War II started, Sigmund Freud, who was the great philosopher, he was an atheist. He was the great thinker of his generation. Sigmund Freud was in London. And we know for a fact that Sigmund Freud, at the outbreak of World War II, this great atheist, this great philosopher, this great thinker, we know he had a meeting with a scholar from Cambridge, but we don't know who. Okay? So now a film has come out, and it was in the cinemas earlier this year, and it's now available for viewing at home. And it's a challenging, inspiring, difficult film in some respects. But it's a film called Freud's Last Session. And what the writers have done is they said, okay, let's imagine that the meeting that this great atheist, Sigmund Freud, had was actually with the great C.S. Lewis. So C.S. Lewis, the writer of Narnia, the great Christian theologian, who defended Christianity, and he was the one who said, that Jesus Christ was either a liar, lunatic, or Lord, and this kind of thing, So you've got C.S. So they said, let's imagine we know Sigmund Freud had a meeting with a Cambridge professor. Let's imagine that it was C.S. Lewis. What would a meeting look like between the greatest atheist of the day, most outspoken atheist of the day, and the greatest Christian theologian of the day? What would that meeting look like? What would happen if we put them together in a room? And this film does just that. We've got Anthony Hopkins plays Freud, a great performance. And we have a discussion between C.S. Lewis on one hand saying, there is a God. No, I don't understand why suffering happens, but I do know Jesus Christ suffered, and I do know Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world, and I do know that it's only through trust in Jesus Christ that mankind can be saved. You've got Lewis saying that. You've got Freud coming back at him saying, well, suffering does happen, and there can't be a God because suffering happens. And yes, Jesus was a great philosopher, but he wasn't the Son of God, And you've got these two heavyweights clashing, and at one point, Lewis actually has to take Freud's dog out for a walk because Freud isn't well enough to do that. But it's called Freud's Last Session. It's available. It is challenging. Lewis is not able to answer all of Freud's questions, but then to counterbalance that, Freud is not able to answer all of Lewis's questions. So there's almost like a stalemate in a way. I'm not quite sure if I was watching this as a neutral who wins. I mean, obviously, as a Christian, as somebody who believes in Jesus watching it, I thought Lewis was winning. Neutral who've watched it might tell me otherwise. I don't know. But it's really worth seeing. If you're interested in theology, if you're interested in debates about why does God allow suffering, because this is at the outbreak of World War II, if you're interested in why God doesn't intervene in this, that, or the other, or who Jesus was and defending who Jesus was, this is a really, really challenging, inspiring film. It's a hard watch because, Freud really, the character of Freud really, pushes Lewis to the limit and really, really gets quite agitated at some points, which again, I think is a sign that Lewis is winning actually, because Lewis stays calm throughout the whole thing. But honestly, Freud's Last Session, really good. Watch at home. Okay. Talking of calm characters, again, now available to watch at home, is one of Tom Hanks's best films. And I don't know about you, I love Tom Hanks. I mean, Tom Hanks, everything from Woody to Captain Phillips to, all points in between. If it's a Tom Hanks film, you're going to watch it. Okay. So he plays a man called Otto, which is the title of the film. Otto is a grumpy old man who lives on his own in a street where he picks on everybody for doing wrong. So if the kids drop a bit of litter, he's out his front door, he's noticed, he's charging down the kids. If somebody's parked their car slightly at the wrong angle, he's out there moaning and groaning and complaining. So Otto is this moaning, groaning, fussy old man. A new family moves into the street. A lady comes by. She starts to befriend him. She starts because she feels sorry for him. He's living on his own. She starts taking him cake and starts to try and befriend him. And one day, to his horror, she asks him to babysit her kids. I mean, we are talking about the ultimate grumpy old man, you know? Will you babysit my kids? And she kind of pushes him into a corner where he's got no choice. It's a delightful film because as the film goes on, Mr. Otto begins to mellow, you know? So it's a lovely character study. It's Tom Hanks at his best, starting off moody and grumpy and then becoming rather lovable, which, you know, Tom Hanks is always going to end up being lovable, whether, you know, whether it's whatever he's playing. I thought it was just really, really enjoyable. A lovely film, a really nice film. You can sit down and watch it with the kids. Tom Hanks plays these sort of characters so well, and you know, it's just a really good film. So, A Man Called Otto is available to watch at home, as is Freud's Last Session. Also, if you're into your science fiction, as I am, and you like your aliens, a new film that came out earlier this year is now available to watch at home called Sting. And Sting, we are in New York, and a small, tiny, tiny meteorite crashes almost unnoticed, absolutely unnoticed. It's so small, so minute, into an apartment block. Out of this tiny, tiny meteorite crawls a tiny, tiny little spider. Thing is, this is obviously an alien spider, and it starts to grow, and it starts to grow, and it starts to grow. Now, in the film, there's a young girl who sees this spider, and she calls it Sting, which is a reference to the sword in Lord of the Rings. If you remember, Bilbo's sword that glowed whenever orcs were nearby was called Sting. And she calls this spider, when she sees it in its small state, Sting. However, the big joke with this film has become the fact that the pop star Sting wrote a song about living in New York. And the lyrics went, "I'm an alien living in New York." so you know, they should have put that on the soundtrack. I'm an alien living in New York. It starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it causes mayhem. It causes absolute mayhem. And what's fun is that an exterminator has been called in to rid this apartment block of rats and other vermin. And of course, he gets called in, and he ends up confronting this now massive spider that's grown and grown and grown. So I thought Sting was really good. It's a low-key film. It's a low-budget film. It's got great special effects, and I really enjoyed it. So to watch at home, you've got a choice. You've got a theological debate between Sigmund Freud and C.S. Lewis. You've got Tom Hanks as a grumpy old man mellowing in A Man Called Otto. You've got a tiny little spider in a science fiction film growing to gigantic proportions in Sting. Also to watch at home now, if you're into it, and I wasn't, is Deadpool and Wolverine, which is the #1 film financially of the year so far. So Deadpool, it's irreverent. It's characters talking to the camera. There's lots of innuendo. There's lots of action. But Deadpool and Wolverine is also available to watch at home. So at the cinema, go see Wild Robot. Definitely looks like the best animated film of the year. At home, you know, if you're really into it and you fancy a real intellectual couple of hours, watch Freud's Last Session or watch A Man Called Otto. Those are the films of the week, Nathan.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Andy. Some good films there. I must say, that one about C.S. Lewis and Sigmund Freud debating sounds fascinating to me personally.
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy it. It really is a great film. I mean, the writers, I did some research into the people who wrote it, and they're not necessarily Christian, but they are able to put the Christian argument into the mouth of C.S.
So
Lewis.
it's well balanced, is it?
I think it's really well balanced. I mean, as I say, I think I'm biased because I'm a Christian, so I want Lewis to win the argument. But people who've seen it, who are not friends of mine, who are not Christians, who are neutral, they think it's really well balanced. They think, you know, the scales could tip one way or the other. But do seek it out. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it. It's called Freud's Last Session, and honestly, it is. And Sigmund Freud died shortly after. Now, whoever this imaginary person was, we don't know in real life. But what a stroke of genius for somebody to write this and say, okay, let's put Sigmund Freud, the great atheist, in the room with C.S. Lewis, the great Christian.
Yeah.
A stroke of genius, really. There have been several films about Lewis that have come out over the years. There was one last year, and I can't remember the title offhand, but it was about Lewis's life. And C.S. Lewis's life is really worth investigating. I mean, he suffered a lot. His first wife, who he loved dearly, died of cancer. So Lewis really went through the mill, and knew what it was to suffer. But he didn't waver his faith. Didn't shake his faith in God or in Jesus Christ. So yeah, definitely, Nathan. I mean, we've got a very busy weekend this weekend because you and me and Andy and the others, we're all going to be in Littlehampton on Saturday, paying tribute to our much missed friend Steve Legg, who we love dearly. So Steve's Thanksgiving service happens on Saturday, so we're going to be in Littlehampton. I'm up to Oswestry after that. I'm giving some lectures at the Operation Mobilisation Bible School on Monday. So I've got a busy weekend coming up, and I know you guys are doing a lot of travelling as well. But if there's time to watch a film, I think probably the film of the week, taking into account those that are at the cinema and those that you can watch at home, I think it is Freud's Last Session.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Andy. Although I must say, that one about the spider, I would personally want to avoid because I hate spiders. No matter how
it's
small
not
or
something
large.
tiny little spider that just grows. So it's an alien film. It's kind of like Alien in a New York apartment block, really. But it's great for me personally. I thought it was great fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very creative idea. The idea
I
of this tiny little spider
Yeah.
in a meteorite.
Yeah, and then just growing and growing. And as I say, they should have put the pop star Sting on the soundtrack with the song, I'm an alien living in New York. That would have just been they didn't, but it should have been on
Mr. Trick. Excellent. Well, thanks, Andy. Great to hear about these new movies. I look forward to speaking again next week.
We will indeed, and hopefully I'll have been to the cinema and seen some of these by then.
Yes.
Certainly have seen Wild Robot by then.
Awesome.
Okay. God bless Nathan. God bless Pure.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone they face bankruptcy, eviction and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.